Hi everybody, my name is Dave Marsh. I'd like to welcome you to the CMA Manager tutorial. And today we're going to take a look at the process of creating and managing a CMA in Matrix. Now before I begin, I'd first like to mention that because each MLS may have slightly different requirements, the system that we'll be using during this tutorial may differ slightly from the one that you're currently working with. Nevertheless, the functionality is the same, and for the most part, whatever you see during this tutorial, you'll easily recognize in your own system. Now, for anyone who's trying to determine the value of a property and at the same time looking to build a trusted relationship with clients, you'll want to ensure that your pricing recommendations are backed by data-driven research and the most up-to-date comparables. With the CMA Manager, you have access to a tool that provides the most reliable data. And the reason for this is that it comes directly from the source. In other words, since the data is managed internally, you can be confident that the information that you provide your client comes from the most reliable market insights available. So whether you're starting a brand new CMA from scratch or updating a client's existing one, you'll first need to access the CMA Manager. And we can do this directly from the My Matrix menu in the header. And it's from here that we're able to create a brand new CMA report or select an existing one to either preview or to modify. So let's begin by first creating the CMA. And in this first step, there are a couple of options to add my subject property. In the first, I'm able to manually fill some of the starter fields that I'd like to include with my subject, which may be necessary if the property is not already on the system. Now, in the second method of adding a subject property, I'm going to use an existing listing or tax record to autofill the form. Next, we're going to create or select a contact to associate with the CMA. And finally, to help expedite the process, we're going to enable the suggested comps option. And this allows the CMA Manager to automatically find up to 50 properties that are comparable to the subject. Then select Create. And you'll notice that our CMA has now been created, and we're able to continue with its configuration, beginning with the CMA Details. And it's from here that we're able to add or modify any information to help identify this CMA at a glance. And we'll do this by updating the report with a more user-friendly name to use within Matrix. Next, I'm going to keep the current property image as the cover, but I am able to change it by selecting a new one. Below this is an option to update who the CMA is being created for, as well as a section for any private notes that I'd like to add for my personal reference. Now in this next part, we're able to add some pricing information, which we're going to get to, but only after we've considered our comparable properties. So for now, let's go ahead and save our changes. And while we're at it, let's also ensure that the entire report is saved. And this guarantees that even your most recent updates are locked into place. So even though the CMA Manager autosaves each step of the process, you can be confident that your changes are fully up to date. Next, we'll need to review our subject property details. More specifically, we'll just need to ensure that all of the current fields are accurate and that the necessary fields are populated, including any custom information that isn't already displayed on the page. To do this, you're able to select from any of the available fields in the database. And if there is an associated value, it'll automatically populate. Now, if the field that you're looking for is not in the database, simply add it manually, along with the associated value. Alright, so you'll also want to ensure that the location of the subject property marker is correctly displayed on the map. And below that is just another opportunity to change the cover photo. Next, you can think of the Map tab as an interactive overview of the subject property and its surrounding comparables. You're also able to manage your comparable properties by adding new ones. And one of those ways is directly from one of your carts. And this can be a collection of properties that you previously accumulated from a variety of different searches, with the intention of including them during this step. You're also able to add comparable properties by using the same 3-panel search feature that you're already familiar with. Now, after you've added your own search criteria, you'll notice the matrix automatically displays the distance from your subject property to each of your comparables. You'll also notice that with each comparable selected, your maximum number of remaining properties decreases by 1, indicating exactly how many more selections you have available. All right, so with my 12 comparables now collected, I'm able to further refine my selection by updating the order they appear in my final report, or by removing a property altogether. And again, because I'm able to interact with the map, I can easily view each comparable's proximity to my subject property. All right, so moving on to the comparison section, we're able to compare our subject property to each of our comparables in a few different ways. And the first is by managing our view, which by default displays each comparable running vertically side by side. Another comparison option is running each comparable horizontally. And finally, the Photos view allows you to cross-compare each of the comparable properties' images. Or for photos that have been tagged during the input process, compare just the images belonging to a specific feature. Now, another way to manage our comparisons is by configuring which of these fields are visible to our client. To do this, we're going to select the Edit Field option. And again, it's from here that we're able to configure which of these fields are visible in the final report. For example, if I'd prefer not to share this information in my CMA, or just to share this information but in a different order. I also have access to my subject properties custom fields from earlier, which I can now add to and allow my client to view whenever they're comparing these properties. And finally, once all of your settings are complete, you're able to save this configuration to use just for this CMA report, or set it as your default to use again for all of your new reports in the future. Now, since these comparables typically focus on properties that are similar to our subject, we can expect their prices to be fairly close to each other as well. And by enabling the adjustment section, we're able to further refine our comparables, making each of them even more comparable to the subject. For example, you'll notice that our subject property has 4 bedrooms, while our comparables may have more bedrooms, less bedrooms, or the same number of bedrooms. So if we assume that the value of a bedroom is $50,000, by adding this amount to the feature value text box, Matrix will automatically deduct $50,000 per bedroom for any comparable property that has more bedrooms. Likewise, for comparable properties with fewer bedrooms, Matrix will add $50,000 per missing bedroom to their value. And if we believe that any of these adjustments are incorrect, we can override the value, which is indicated by a highlighted background. All right, so the property full section is simply an area to explore each comparable property in more detail. And you'll recognize this layout as the exact same format used within the standard 3-panel search, displaying full property details, including listing information, tax information, a photo gallery, plus any other property insights that are specific to your system. Now in this final tab, the summary section is a very important step in building a CMA report. It allows us to visualize exactly how each of the comparables align with our subject property. And it does this by providing a clear visual context of exactly where the subject property sits on the scale relative to its comparables. For example, we're able to pinpoint across 3 key metrics where the subject property stands on price, square footage, and price per square foot. And then with this data, along with our familiarity of the comparables, suggest a price for the property. And if you remember, we can do this by returning back to the CMA Details section, where we can add not only a suggested price or price range, but also include a personal message explaining the rationale behind this pricing. So when my client does review the final report, not only are they able to see my suggested price, but also understand the reasoning for it, including the matrix AVM consideration, and each of the ranges that are provided based on the price adjustment from the comparison section. Now to navigate the scale, we're able to adjust its zoom level, to either view more properties or fewer properties at once. We can also switch between card sizes, choosing large cards, medium cards, or for maximum visibility, the small cards, balancing the perfect amount of information for the available space on the screen. And finally, the filter option allows you to isolate only properties with a specific status, making the scale easier to navigate when there are too many properties to view at the same time. Now, before we're able to share this CMA report, we'll first need to personalize its contents, starting with selecting a style, which for this report will use the basic layout. Next, we're going to want to choose which pages to include in our CMA, which we're able to quickly preview in web mode or examine as a PDF. And then with the disable option, remove any of the pages that should not appear in our final report. Now, included with each of the selected pages is the option to add a comment, either as a private note to yourself or as a visible message that's shown on the page for your client. Now, in addition to choosing from the available default pages to use, we're also able to include personalized information by uploading our own custom pages. Like with this example that was initially saved in the stats section as a PDF document. And I now have the option of renaming, or when it's no longer relevant, delete altogether. Okay, so now that we've chosen and customized our pages, the next step is to arrange their order, so that all of the information that we've added flows smoothly for the client. All right, so with my pages now set, I'm going to save my configuration as my new default going forward. In other words, the next time I build a CMA report, I'm able to start it with these exact same pages in the same order. Keep it in mind that it's just a starting point, and that I'm still able to modify the pages in the future. And finally, when you're ready to share your completed CMA report, you can either choose to download it to your hard drive or select a contact and send it directly from Matrix by including a mandatory subject line and an optional message. You can also choose to BCC yourself to keep a copy for your personal records, then select Send. All right, so in this final part of the video, we're going to head back to explore the dashboard in more detail. But before we do that, let's go ahead and manually save our report. Now you can think of this dashboard area as a central library for all of your CMA reports, whether they're currently in progress or already completed. And it's essentially designed to keep everything organized and easy to manage, starting with an option to select one or more of the reports to delete. Next, for dashboards that contain too many reports to find a specific one quickly, there's an option to sort by date and alphabetically. There's also an option to filter your reports according to how they were initially created. For example, CMAs that started here in the CMA Manager or from comparable properties exported from a search are both considered property CMAs. On the other hand, if you began your CMA by selecting a Full Displays View Comparable Properties button, then that would be considered an M360 property. But regardless of which option you choose, it's simply a tool to categorize or filter how the CMA was started. And finally, you're able to view your library in a few different displays, beginning with the default list view, the thumbnail view, or the gallery view, with each display offering the same access to their management tools, like a quick edit option to immediately return to this CMA's configuration pages. There's also options to generate the PDF, return again to the configuration pages, email the report, or delete the CMA altogether. But if you're just looking for a quick preview, simply select anywhere on the item to open the preview panel, which includes the same options to edit, email, and view the CMA. All right, well, this concludes this CMA Manager tutorial. I'd like to thank you for watching and I hope you can join me for another session. Take care.